Welcome to the San Gorgonio chapter Trail Talk series. My name is John St. Clair and I'm your Zoom host for tonight's Trail Talk presentation, which happens the third Wednesday of every month at 7 o'clock. And tonight's presentation is being given by Norman Bossom on a recent trip to England he took. He's going to talk about sightseeing and hiking in England. And I might mention next month's Trail Talk is going to be given by me, and I'm going to talk about my 2016 trip to Peru and hiking on the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. So I want to go over a few of the rules. First of all, everybody should be muted except for the speaker. And me, because I'm speaking right now, and it looks like I need to make Julianne a co-host. Okay, so if you have questions during the presentation, what we want you to do is click on the little chat icon at the bottom of your screen. It shows a talking bubble with the word chat under it. And if you click on that, it will kind of open up the chat window, and then you type your question in there, send it to everyone. And Julianne and I, and maybe Carla, if she's here, will be monitoring that. And we will relay those questions to Norman when there's an appropriate time to answer questions. And I think at this point, I'm going to introduce Julianne. Julianne, are you going to introduce Norman? Can you do that?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
So I'm going to remove the spotlight from me and put the spotlight on Julianne, and you can introduce Norman.
Oh, thank you. Welcome, everybody. As usual, John's done his lovely job hosting this. I'm so pleased to welcome our colleague, Norman Bossom, to present yet again with us. And this time, I'm sure it's something very close to his heart on hiking in the UK and touring in the UK. As Norm is, and this warms my city attorney heart, former police detective from the UK. So a man with a great attention to detail and knows how to find things and how to figure things out. And he has been in the Apple Valley area, I know, for some time, and as a member of their historical society, as well as being a long-term Sierra Club San Gorgonio chapter outings leader. Norm is just invaluable and has given several fabulous presentations in the past, the most recent being on the Mojave Road through the Mojave Preserve area from the California border heading west. Just fascinating. And I know since we've previewed this program that he's going to give tonight, this is going to be equally fascinating. So with that, Norm, welcome. And I'm going to toss it over to you to begin your presentation and to lead us in hiking in the UK, something that I think is just delightful. So take it away, Norm.
Okay, so now I'm going to put Norman on the spotlight, and let's hope we can make this work. So do you see yourself on the screen?
I do, yes.
You see the share screen thing at the bottom?
I do.
All right, click on that.
Yeah.
What happened when you click share screen?
Oh, there was a little thingy came up.
There we go.
There you go.
And then just click play up at the top.
Set. There you go.
I got it.
Okay, you're in.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
We're off and running.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we've gone to the this is the start of it.
There you go.
So let's click on play. Now we've got it. Great. Okay, well, good evening to everybody. First and foremost, what I need to do is give you some information to help you if you are ever considering going to England or going to the UK. And remember, the UK is England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Mainly, I'll be talking about England, and there's a reason for that. Just to let you know that the Sierra Club actually do a trip to England, and it's in the northern part from a place called Carlisle across to Newcastle. It's a 15-day jaunt, and the great thing about it is that all accommodation, transport, and food is accounted for. It costs $4,100, and it's for 15 days, and they talk about 2 days when you get there that you actually need to acclimatize because of the jet lag. And it involves flying into Manchester in the northeast of England, and the flights are not included in that 4,100. Flight will probably cost you around $1,200, direct flight return trip. So that then you can sort of work out how much you want to pay. Honest opinion, I actually think it's a pretty darn good deal, seeing the itinerary that they've got. There are numerous other tour companies in the UK who do these things, so it's always worth looking around. What I'm going to do is explain how if you're hiking in England, in actual fact, if you bear in mind that it's a small country, the land mass is the size of New York State, that's England, and the land mass is the size of Oregon for the United Kingdom. And when you're in the UK, you are never more than 70 miles from the sea. So it is a small country, but when you get there, it's a whole lot of countryside, as I'll explain to you. My personal choice is always to fly there, hire a car, and drive around. And just so that you know, I don't sort of recommend it to people from America because they seem to be a little bit concerned because you have to drive on the other side of the road, and people don't seem to care very much for roundabouts. Having said that, I was in Big Bear only a week and a half ago and driving around roundabouts, brand new ones. So you do have them in America, but people seem to get a bit confused. But the great thing about the country, because it's so small, is the transport system is excellent. The trains will take you all over the country, and there are just buses everywhere. The country has, and this is the UK, has 140,000 miles of footpaths, 16,000 miles of cycleways, 20,000 miles of bridleways. And a bridleway or a bridle path is by law on these places, and they are signed, a horse has the right of way, even if it's not being ridden. So pretty ancient that. And the 140,000 miles of footpaths are public footpaths that go across private land in many places. And this is an ancient thing where the lord of the manor owned all the land around, and people had to learn to walk across the land. So what they did, they allowed them to go across on footpaths, and that has remained since. There's 6,700 miles that are they're square miles that are mapped for hiking. There are 14 national parks, hundreds of forests, and there are over 30 areas of natural beauty. So you have a really, really great choice. What I wanted to do was also explain that there are vacations there on canal boats, waterways, cycling, horse riding, and you can mix it all up. And there's also a thing that's very, very popular now, which is called glamping. And that's basically camping, but the thing that you stay in is better than a tent, and it's provided. And what they also have there are restrooms and places where you can buy food. And that has become very, very popular. What I did, I obviously flew in to Heathrow in relation to the place I'm going to talk about, which is called Buxton in Derbyshire in the Peak District, which is, when you see the photographs, you'll see absolutely gorgeous area, terrific history, lots of hiking there. And what I'm going to urge people to do, if you want to get the most out of any trip to England or the UK, is planning. Really important to plan, because there is just so much to see. And I'll give you some examples of what there is to see. In the UK, there are 40,000 plus church buildings, various denominations. Most of them are very old. Over 16,000 of them are Anglican, which is the Church of England Protestant. There are 260 cathedrals, over 100 in England, and these places are always worth a visit. In England, you have over 800 castles. In Wales, you have 600, and in Scotland, 2,000. Most of them are what they call visible remains. Having said that, the places that they're in, generally on the borders, are they're elevated, and the towns that are close by them are really worth watching, visiting. So what I did, I flew in to Heathrow, and I drove out to Wales to see my sister. And then I came back and I went to this place called Buxton. It apparently got its name from Buxton. That's where they think it came from. And they have found dwellings there that date back 6,000 years, and other artifacts that date back 5,000 years. It's a spa town of 20,000 people. It sits in the middle of the Peak District all on its own, as you'll see. Beautiful place, great history. And one of the things to remember is that in the UK, in the summer, it's all geared for tourism. What I recommend is going at the end of May into June. And the reason for that is the end of May, you've got the spring, and you've still got all the spring foliage and everything else. Thing to remember is when you're there, it will rain. Fortunately, if you go May, June, July, it's going to be warm rain. So you always need something to just cover yourself, keep the rain off if you're going out. And it's worth going out in this, because if you get 2 or 3 days, you might start to lose them if you don't want to go out in the rain. So I recommend that that's what you do. And like I say, it's always that time of year, it's always the temperature is very moderate. The other thing to remember is this. Yes, everybody in England, UK speaks English, but in Europe, of course, now you'll find that, and in Scandinavia, that English is spoken, or people there in those countries know it very well. So that barrier has basically been lifted. The one thing about the UK is that there are no wild animals that can harm you. So you're not looking around at every corner for snakes and mountain lions or bears. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay, so the town of Buxton is 26 miles south of Manchester. So if you actually chose Buxton, you could fly into Manchester, jump on a bus, or if you wanted to stay overnight at a hotel in Manchester, then get on a bus the next day and go to Buxton. Like I said, it's an absolutely beautiful town. And I'm hoping that I will give it the G up that it deserves. Garden wildflowers. They had this system going while I was over there, and it was called No Mow May. And what they did, people were leaving areas in their garden to just grow wild, and all the on the streets, all the grass areas were left to grow wild. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? Well, the idea is pollen, to encourage the seeds, to encourage the growth, to encourage the bees, etc., etc. Here we have bluebells, which are wildflowers, and you can see some of them are pink. This was actually in the garden of the Airbnb that I stayed at. The yellow flowers, 2 yellow ones, are buttercups, and I think you'll find that the really small mauve one that's all spiky is probably a dandelion. But what people were doing was allowing the wildflowers to grow. Lovely thing about Buxton, the buildings are generally Georgian Victorian. And as you'll see from the place I stayed at, which is at least Victorian, they built them out of a local thing called grit stone. And all these buildings are in streets that are lined with trees, and you walk around there and people have got areas in their garden that they've allowed wildflowers to grow. And this is what you're seeing here is not uncommon, and it really is beautiful. As I said, Victorian or Edwardian houses, and that's the gritstone. That's the place I stayed at. As I said, the people that own it didn't know whether it was Victorian or Georgian. So I'm thinking it's probably early Victorian. Very nice. Really enjoyed it there. Nice room, the shower. They didn't do any breakfast, so I had to go elsewhere. And as you can see to the left in next door's garden, they've got some wildflowers growing there as well. Yeah, really lovely place. As I spoke about the number of churches, I thought I would take a picture of this one. The date on the front says 1849, built out of local stone, very, very pretty. And as you can see at the side, they're obviously doing repairs. It's still in use. It's a Wesleyan Methodist church. And as I said, as I gave you details of the number of church buildings that there are in the UK, this is just typical of some of them. First place I came to walking down the town. The next place I came to was the market. And the market is every Tuesday and every Saturday, and it's they're allowed to do it on the street, and it's from a royal charter, which is pretty ancient, probably dates back 400 or 500 years. And that is a charter from the king, which says, yes, you can hold it. The claim to fame for Buxton is that it is the highest market in England. It's at 1,000 feet above sea level. Very close to it is the local town hall, which dates to the, in fact, it dates to 1895. And it's of a Gothic design, and it's still used as the town hall. And you can see the local stone again. And next door to it, you can see the pub, which again is at least 1890s. You can tell by the architecture. Oh, okay. One of the things that I did learn was that there are more church buildings than there are pubs in the UK, which really did surprise me. Anyway, the reason that I took a photograph of this one is because, as I said, I was staying at an Airbnb and they didn't do breakfast or any other meals, which was fair enough. I don't have a problem with that. And so I went down to Wetherspoons to eat breakfast. The Wetherspoon pub, interesting story here. There was a guy in 1979, a guy called Tim Martin decided that he was going to buy out all pubs that were being sold off or left or transferred to regular buildings, and he bought them, and he went to all the brewers in the country, and he said, "I will buy in multitudes your beer, but the one thing you have to do is you've got to give it to me cheap." And all alcohol and soft drinks in Wetherspoon's premises are extremely reasonable. They have an excellent menu, vegetarian, anything that you want. They do Indian food, they do all sorts of stuff. And they also do a breakfast as well. Now, this building here is the Wybridge House, and it dates at least to 1850, and it was a home. And the gentleman that lived there with his wife and 4 children and a couple of servants, they obviously used this premises. As you can see, it's extremely big. Then it became a hotel, and eventually Tim Martin of Wetherspoons bought it. The interesting thing about Tim Martin is, you think, well, why does he call it Wetherspoons? And he calls all of his pubs and his hotels Wetherspoons. He was at college in New Zealand, and one of his tutors told him, "Martin, you will never amount to anything." The name of the teacher was Wetherspoon. So just as a point, he calls everywhere Wetherspoons. The breakfast I had there was they have several breakfasts. You can have a continental breakfast, whatever. I had a full English breakfast with as much coffee as I wanted, and the coffee is really, really good. And it was £6, which is maybe $7, which is a heck of a deal. So that's where I was having my breakfast. And the great thing was it was about a mile from where I was staying, so good walk down there. Next door to it is this. This park dates way back pre-1930. It's at least a mile walking down one side of it and then walking down the other side. And as you can see, it's absolutely gorgeous. And running alongside the park is the river. Once again, just reminding everybody, Buxton is a spa town, and it was inhabited by the Romans, who just loved their spa towns. And even now they sell their spa water nationally. It's bottled and sold because of its healing properties. And so wherever you go around Buxton, you find water. I think this is called the River Wye, W-Y-E. But again, absolutely lovely. I took a photograph of this for the simple reason that I think it's absolutely magnificent. And it's even more magnificent when you take a look at it and you can see that there's a train going across this viaduct. The trains came to Buxton in 1863. They built a train station, and close by it, they had to build this viaduct. And it's typical of constructions at that time. But the thing that makes it so spectacular for me is that it's still being used. And I had a really good look around it, and I'm not seeing any repairs at all. It just seems to be pretty unique from the date that it was built. Absolutely gorgeous. And you'll find, as you go around the UK, that you'll find an awful lot of viaducts like this. Some of them dating back to the 1840s, 1850s, but this seems to be the style. Yeah. Pardon my indulgence. Okay. So here's the question. Who was St. Anne? Anyway, answers not on a postcard, but you can put them on the chat line if you know who St. Anne is. And if you don't, and so far I haven't found anybody who actually does know who St. Anne is. I had to find go find out for myself. So no cheating, no going to the internet to find out. That's not fair. Anyway, there was a well here, and it was dedicated to St. Anne, and then they built this monument to her. And as you can see, there is water coming out, and the water comes from the spa. And while I was there were people walking by, and they're filling their water bowls, drinking the water. So that's really nice. This was actually, this spa monument was actually completed in 1940. But as I said, there was already a well there prior to this. Well, so the aristocracy were in Buxton. Actually, they owned Buxton and probably most of Derbyshire. And it was Lord Devonshire. They're actually the Cavendish family. And what Lord Devonshire decided was that he needed somewhere to keep all of his horses. So he built the Devonshire Dome, which up until very recently was the largest unsupported dome in the world. There is another one in America somewhere, but we'll stick with this one. And this Devonshire Dome was completed in 1868. And all around on the inside, you've got concrete buildings, well, brick buildings or brick sections that are for the horses. And if you want me to be honest with you, it's really grand. This place is now part of the Derby University. And they have weddings there, they have everything there. But it's part of the university. And I took this picture, and then when I stepped back to take another one, this security guy shouted at me and said, "We've got people here who are under 18, you can't take photographs." And I'm like, oh, it's free to go in, and they'll let you in, and they'll even tell you all about it. And if you go to the middle of the dome and you clap your hands, you get this really unique echo sound. It's really is quite spectacular, and it is a spectacular building as well. Just a bit disappointed that I couldn't take more photographs of it, to be quite honest. But what I would say is, if you are sufficiently interested, if you go to YouTube and put Devonshire Dome in Buxton, they'll show it to you. And it's there's people there having weddings, and you'll see what a truly magnificent building it is. Naughty me, for taking the photograph that I shouldn't. Well, but I got sneaky when I went outside, because that's the dome from the outside.
Hey, Norm.
Yeah.
We've got a few questions. Maybe we could
Sure.
answer them. First of all, for all of us here that aren't super well versed in English geography, tell us basically where Derbyshire is. Is that southwest?
Okay, if
Central?
you go on the map and you get Manchester in the northeast, it's 24 or 26 miles south of Manchester. And if you go east, you hit Yorkshire and the wonderful city of York. So that's Buxton is 24 miles, 26 miles south. I can't remember which one it is now, of Manchester. You know, one of the other reasons I chose this was because if I'm going to talk to people about it and they are not going to hire or rent a car, then flying into Manchester is the thing to do. Then jump on a bus and go to Buxton.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah, one of the things I will say is this: Buxton sits on its own in the middle of the countryside, and as you can gather, it's quite elevated. But when I drove in from the south, from Wales, and the drive in was just phenomenal. Driving into Buxton, the countryside and the rocks and everything else, it was just, I'd not seen it before from that angle, and it was absolutely gorgeous. When I left, I went a different way, but slightly east, going south. And again, it's just so spectacular, the countryside around.
A couple of the questions before we move forward. you mentioned, and this is unbelievable to me, 140,000 miles of footpaths throughout England. And that's not even the whole UK, it's England. Is there a guide or an online resource for people to kind of map out or research where the footpaths are and then where the 6,000 miles of hiking paths? What would you recommend?
Okay, yeah. That is the UK, by the way, 140,000 miles
Okay.
to the UK.
Okay. Okay.
And it's the same with the bridle ways and the 6,700 square miles that are mapped. Okay. There's a group called Ramblers UK. And I put it up, it is my last slide. But
Right.
the Ramblers are, they cover the whole of the UK, obviously, and you can contact them and get on their website and they will give you all the details you need. So if you select an area, they will tell you. I mean, I selected Buxton. One of the things I found about Buxton was that there's an item on the internet, which is the 11 best hikes / walks in Buxton, and they range from 1.7 miles to about 6.7, and they go out in the countryside all around. And yeah, they're well mapped out. So and that's just in that area. See, as I said, what they're doing is they're gearing everything to tourism, and the Peak District is massive for hiking. And so they've got it well covered. Wherever you go in the Peak District, they've got it well covered. And I strongly suspect that it's the same everywhere else in the UK too. Remember, it's the country runs on tourism.
Mhm.
So, you know, they're really going to push this.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and finally, I love that you found like a not expensive, but really good restaurant. And are the Weatherspoons all over England, all over the UK? It sounds like there are a lot of them.
There are just under or just over 900.
Oh my goodness.
And they are all over the country, and they've even got some in Southern Ireland, but
Wow.
only 2. But yes, they're all over the country.
Okay.
I mean, one of the things that when I chose Buxton, I was going to go there anyway, but one of the things I did, I checked to make sure they had a Weatherspoons, because it's just a good place to go.
That's good to know. That's
Yeah.
good to know. Well, enough of my questions. Let me get out of the way.
Okay. This is the Victorian pump house. As you can see, made with the same stone. It's now the tourist centre, but you go in there and the bars that they used to use for the spas are still in there, and you can walk around and have a look at it. And the people in the tourist office are just, they are really knowledgeable. Like I say, the place is geared for it, for tourism, and they've got stuff there to show you and give you and everything. But like I said, it's better to have got this all worked out before you get to an area, and then you can just cover it a little bit more by going into this place. And the building inside is really worth going into, and it's next door to the monument to St. Anne. This is a fascinating place. This was, again, it's the Earl of Devonshire, Lord Devonshire, whichever one he was, one of the Cavendish people, owned all the land all around. And he decided that, and remember, this is prior to the dome, he decided he wanted to put his horses somewhere. And that's what all those arches are for him to put his 44 horses. This was finished in 1759. It, if you look at it, you can see on the roof there, there's a coat of arms, which would be the Devonshires. It's now 2 hotels. One of them is a spa. So if you were fortunate enough to be able to afford it and you wanted to go to Buxton, that might be the place to go. Understand, it's very, very nice. But like I said, it was finished in 1759, and it's modelled on the same type of building from the city of Bath. And the city of Bath is also a spa town and was also occupied by the Romans. That is really a magnificent building. The Buxton Opera House and Pavilion, not only do they have opera, but they have numerous other things as well. They're always trying to keep it busy, shows and comedy and everything you can imagine. And it was built in 1903. And again, you can see the type of stone that they use. But it's a lovely building. Next door to it is the Pavilion Park. The Pavilion Park is over 2 miles if you walk one end to the other. It's one of the 11 best hikes or walks in Buxton, and it is absolutely gorgeous there. And the thing that you see in the middle is actually, it's like a little dome thing, and they dated things that they found there back 5,000-6,000 years. But as you see, absolutely gorgeous place. Oh, wrong way, and that's next to it. That runs between the park and the pavilion. Next to the pavilion is also a garden to walk around, which is really gorgeous. I never got time to go in there. My 3 days there were just not enough, I'm sad to say. But I didn't get to walk around the gardens. And the little white flowers, you see more wildflowers. Yeah, it's very pretty. Okay, you may have noticed, and I noticed it too, that the monument to St. Anne, spelt St. Anne with one E, without an E, and St. Anne's Church, which is circa 1625, is actually spelt with an E. Don't know about that one. This building was originally, it was built in 1625. It was originally a barn, and then in the late 1600s, they decided to turn it into a church. And I've seen photographs of the inside because it's still used as a church. I've seen the photographs, and it's got wooden beams that support it all. And the picture that it shows of it is absolutely gorgeous. And it's a pretty solid building. I understand the roof went on later. Don't know exactly when, but it did. But that's absolutely gorgeous. Okay. Well, I walked through the Pavilion Park, which we've just seen, and then I started climbing up to a place called Paul's Cavern. And this has an interesting story too. Don't know if it's true, you know what history can do. But in the 1500s, when Buxton probably only had about 30 houses, there was a guy in the village called Poole, and Poole was a thief and a robber. And they were very unhappy with him, and so what he did, he went and stayed in the cavern. Now, there's two things I'll say here, because I did actually do the cavern tour. It is really cold in there. So if he was staying in there, he'd need to wrap himself up pretty well, and he'd have to have had a fire. Anyway, they were so concerned about him, and they were obviously scared of him. So what they did, they bricked it up, and that's how he met his demise. And then they named the cavern after him. The cavern was opened as a tourist attraction in the late Victorian times by the Earl of Devonshire, or Lord Devonshire, whichever one it was at that time. And it's absolutely gorgeous in there. And when you walk in, there's an area that's cordoned off, and it's got little flags in it and everything else. And it's they've discovered a burial ground for the Romans. Now, we know the Romans were in the UK, not so much Scotland, but they were in the UK from AD 49 to AD 410. So the graves obviously go back to those days. As I said, it was marked off. And what they're doing is they're actually excavating those graves, and I would imagine they're probably doing it out of season. As I said, it really is a gorgeous place. And there you can see the stalagmites and stalactites. Don't ask me which is which. But I think it cost about something like about $18 equivalent, and there's people who take you around, and it's a lovely tour, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And as you can see, what they've done is with the lighting is they've really accentuated the beauty of it. It's a lovely, lovely place, and next to it is a little cafe, and you can buy scones and cups of tea there. It's really, really nice. Really liked it. From there, I had my cup of tea in the cafe, and I walked through a really large wooded area, which it doesn't, I've looked online and it doesn't say it's a forest, but it sure looks like a forest to me. And as you'll see, it will be a forest to you, I'm sure. That is the forest that I walked up. There were 3 hiking trails through the forest. I took one of the long ones round. When you come out the other side, you start to come up a hill, and you get a great view of Buxton. And as you can see, right, just slightly to the left of middle, you can actually see the dome. But you get the picture of what the area is like. It was a lovely day, lovely hike. And what I did, I took photographs showing the area around it. In this area, they were mining limestone. And I tell you that because there's another story to be told. But as you can see, the woodland is there. It's pretty dense. There's even a campground in the woodland. So it goes back to what I was saying about, you know, there are so many options for you, campgrounds, whatever. And again, a view to another side. You can actually see the people walking away. And what you can also see, that's a farm in the distance. And you can actually see footpaths going through it, which is a public right of way. And all these public footpaths are signed. Another view, more farmland, more footpaths. Good day, beautiful area. Okay, right. So this is what's on top of the hill. In going back to the 16, 17, 1800s, this would be called a keep, but that's not what it is. And a keep is an area where that's elevated, that you keep a lookout to protect the town. And then if there was some sort of problem, you'd light a fire so that the people in the town would be warned that there would be marauding Spanish or French or whatever the heck it might be that was invading at the time. That was the idea of it. This, as I said, is on top of the hill. And what had happened was the Earl of Devonshire, his mine workers, and they were mining the limestone, didn't have anything to do. So he said, well, we can't have them being unemployed, so we'll employ them to build this monument at the top of the hill so that when people walk up, and if they're tired and hot, they can actually get in the shade, and then they can climb up the one set of stairs and have a look around. So he employed his mine workers to build this. And the guy he put in charge of it, see, what I thought was, is this something to do with Solomon's temple? But no, it's not. In actual fact, the guy that he employed to build it was a guy called Solomon McKee. So it ended up being Solomon's temple. Anyway, the first problem they had was that when they started digging the foundations, not surprisingly, they found artifacts that dated back 4,000 or 5,000 years. And you can imagine that the people in that time would have been on the top of the hill looking around in case there were some marauders from other towns, well, actually other villages that they would have been living in. So they dug all those, they had to stop it, dig all those out, and they had to, and then they built this place at the top of the hill. The interesting thing is, and I never had time, and I've got to be honest with you, when I went on YouTube and saw the Buxton Museum, I was really disappointed that I didn't go there. It is absolutely magnificent, and the artifacts from this place will be in there. But as I say, it's on YouTube, Buxton Museum. It really is lovely, really impressive. I just didn't have time to get there to do it. No, there it is, ramblers.org.uk, and the 11 best hikes and walks in Buxton, for anyone who's interested. And the reason I put 11 best hikes and walks in Buxton on there is because I think you'll find that most towns, places that take tourists, will have that sort of thing on their website. And that is it.
What a wonderful presentation, Norm. Couple of other questions. I love the idea of sort of a hub and spoke where you pick a spot and you stay there for a few days and you just walk about. You're able to hike and walk out from the center. I think that's just a wonderful way of getting to know an area, not being in the middle of, urban madness. Any other places that are like the Buxton idea where you can reach it by train or bus and then just hike to your heart's content or walk? Any other suggestions for everyone here tonight?
Yeah, if you go to the Derbyshire map, the map of the county, it's not a big county, but yeah, that's what you can pick any one of the larger towns there. Go online and you'll see there's Bakewell, and there's another one as well, which I really should know. I'm not one for the cities. That said, the city of York is the loveliest city I've ever been to in the UK. It's absolutely gorgeous there. And I mean, for anyone who wants to, check out the city of York, and it is spectacular. And the great thing about it is that it's going to take you 4 or 5 days to get around all the museums and everything else there. And yeah, it's that's what I would suggest. And the great thing about York is you can just jump on a bus and go to another town.
Mm-hmm.
And there are lots of towns around it, and just a short journey on the bus. And there are buses like every half hour in these places. They're running all the time.
Now, what about places that are surrounding London? I know it would take a bit to get outside of metropolitan London, but same idea, a smaller venue where you can hike and walk about. Any suggestions for Southern England?
Well, yeah, there are so many places, particularly going to the west in England, the city of Bath. But there are just so many other cities as well. The problem with London is that it's a real sprawl now. So to actually get away from it, if you look at a map of London, you'll see that the freeway, the motorway all around it is the M25. You have to get outside that, and then just select a place that you want to go and check it all out.
And what about the national parks, Norm? How do they compare to ours? And can you do the similar thing where you stay in the national park or in the area and you could just walk about? What do you think? What would be your picks?
Like I said, Buxton is in a national park. So you're free to walk it wherever you want. There's no charge.
Right.
There are no charges at all. You can walk them. As I said, what you see there with Buxton surrounded by countryside, it's all it's the Peak District, and it's just free to everybody. Yeah.
What about the Lake District, with the Cotswolds? What would you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. either of them. If you want a lot of water and you want to do some boating and see some fabulous scenery, the Lake District, which is north of Manchester, that's ideal. The Cotswolds are west of London. I mean, I would always recommend the Cotswolds, but it is more expensive there.
Mm-hmm. And what about Wales and Scotland?
Well, you remembering that Scotland is the further north you go, the tougher the weather. Scotland, my personal view of Scotland is that the Highlands in Scotland are just stunning. And if they're not the most beautiful place in the British Isles, I'd like to see what is. So yes, they are really wonderful. But what's wonderful also about Wales is South Wales, Cardiff, all the way across to Swansea is industrial, but out to the far west, Carmarthenshire, and coming up all the way through Wales, it's not industrial. Anywhere around there is really gorgeous. The Brecon Beacons are just, it's a stunning area. It really is. There are just so many choices. That's what I say. If you're going to go somewhere, then you need to make you need to plan it,
right,
and make sure that you've made the right choice, because there are so many places to see and so many things to see that you can miss stuff if you haven't planned it well enough.
And what would you recommend in the Highlands? Is there a particular small city that you like, village? What's a good pick for people to maybe use as a base?
I can't believe it. I've forgotten the name of the place I stayed at.
It's okay. It's okay.
I mean, the island of Skye is another place as well. That is just something else, and that is part of the Highlands. You have to take a bridge to get across it, but it's all free, and yeah, it really is gorgeous. But just before you get to the bridge to go to Skye, there's a town, and I've forgotten the name of it. But you if you check out places in the Highlands, you are not going to go wrong. You can't go.
Right. And what about the Southeast? Any recommendations? Getting toward the Channel, that kind of area?
Towards the Channel, yeah, absolutely. Well, the counties of Kent is known as the Garden of England. They grow an awful lot of hops there, and Kent is a beautiful county, and it's very close, always close to the seaside. And so is Sussex, which so you've got Kent and Sussex to the east, and again you've got forests in these areas, and there'll be places to walk and places to stay, bearing in mind that it is more expensive the further south you go, and if you go out towards the Cotswolds, it gets a little bit more expensive there as well. I mean, you're not talking about monumental amounts of money, but it is a little bit more expensive, and it's as well to bear that in mind.
Well, if I may ask, just to compare, how much did you pay for your Airbnb? Was it equivalent of a couple $100 American, or how many pounds?
Well, for the 3 days I stayed there, I think it was $140.
Oh, that's a good deal.
Yeah.
For a beautiful place like that, that's a great deal.
Yeah, it is good. Yeah, that's right.
That's a great deal.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong. I mean, Airbnb or Booking.com, you can find, if you're looking for more, the great thing about Booking.com is that they'll start you off with the more expensive places and run you down to the cheaper, or the other way around, I can't remember. So you'll get some really nice hotels. So you get some really lovely bed and breakfasts. And there are two things that I like about staying in these places. The Tourist Association keep a check on bed and breakfast to make sure that they're of a good quality, and a lot of them are inspected. But the thing I liked about Airbnb was that not only do you get to review the place that you stay at, but they get to review you. so you don't get any idiots going back there.
Right.
Which I think that's a good idea, because everybody
Yeah.
should be behaving properly.
Yes, I agree. Wow, what a great presentation. Thank you so much, Nora. It gives us so many ideas
I just have to get out of this.
for hiking and walking and touring. And we haven't even started on something close to my heart, which are gardens and both, you know, the great gardens or just allotments and that are of note. I mean, I could talk all day about that, but since it's the Sierra Club, it's good that we're talking about hiking and walking. So what an excellent presentation. Just love it.
I think one of the things that we have to understand is that, I mean, I know a few people in our local Sierra Club, they can't go hiking.
Right.
But
Yes.
they can take short walks in these places, and they can go on these tours. Like I said, your first thought is $4,100 for this trip to England, and you've got to pay for the flight. But I think it's a good deal. I've seen the itinerary, and it's a good deal.
Yeah, that's a great, actually it is. I mean, I just came back from a road trip and around the Rockies and the Canadian Rockies, and that's actually a very good deal.
Yeah.
To have nice places to stay and have everything pre-organized. I think it's a fine deal.
One of the things they do is they take you on a day trip to York. And I mean, like I said, the city of York is just, it's such a fantastic place.
Is it just the history, Norm, or is it beauty or walkability? What draws you to York?
It's well, firstly, 2/3 of it is wall, which dates back to 1200.
Yeah.
And as I told you about, you've got Clifford's Tower, you've got old buildings in there all over the place. And what the city of York do is they employ 2 archaeologists full time. And whenever they are doing a building or renovating a building, or they're going below ground, the archaeologists have to go in there first, because there's going to be artifacts. There always are.
Yeah.
You know, and walking around the wall is, you just sort of imagine what it must have been like. And of course, there's a gorgeous river that goes through it, and you get river trips, and the old buildings that are in there are really, really stunning. It's a fabulous place. Yeah.
And what do you think of Yorkshire as a place to hike and walk? Is there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no question about it. If you find a town in Yorkshire, somewhere like, there's a place called Pickering, which is really, really lovely, and you just go stay there, and you'll have hikes and walks all around it. Yorkshire is fabulous. Yeah. Again, it's, like I said, it's geared for tourism. Yeah.
Well, Norm, thank you. What a delightful, I could just talk for hours about this. So thank you so much for lending us your expertise. I think now everybody knows who to go to plan a trip to England or the UK or the UK. You're going to be fielding a lot of phone calls, Norm.
Just so as they know, I did try to get you guys to help fund my trip. But of course, that wouldn't have been fair, because I got to tell you, I mean, I do tell the story. I had my dinner in Wetherspoons one evening, and I'm looking at the beers that they've got, and I know I told you this story previously, and they got this beer called Wobbly Joe, and I'm looking at it and I'm seeing that it's really strong. So I had a couple of pints of it with my dinner, and I was walking, because I have to walk a mile back to the Airbnb, and I was thinking, I need to call it Wobbly Norm. The stuff was strong, but it's absolutely lovely. If you like real ales, Wetherspoons have great real ales. The one I told you about, the other one that was there, it was the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's what they called this beer, and I was like, wow. But no, it's really good.
Well, you could go on a tasting tour as well as a hiking tour.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's fun. Well, Norm, thank you so much. What a beautiful trip, and how fun that you could share it with us. So
Well, I'm pleased to share it with everybody. I think, you know, one of the things we don't, you see these programs on the telly and you see Vera and Endeavour and all sorts of things like that, and Midsummer Murders,
sure.
and you see the countryside and everything, but it's the joy would be seeing it and enjoying the local, what I would call, excuse me, a subculture. It's like in Derbyshire, I told you about there's the town of Bakewell, which is well worth, well, there's actually a thing called a Bakewell tart, which comes from there. And in Cornwall, you've got Cornish pasties and things like that, so you get lots of subcultures all the way around, because people didn't actually travel that much back in the day, not like they do now. But I mean, I'd never been to Buxton before. I absolutely loved it. I'm just really disappointed that I didn't see the museum.
Well, you're making us all want to go. I mean, just the beauty of the buildings themselves. I mean, we don't see that many stone buildings here. Nothing like that. Where everything is built of stone. Gorgeous, just gorgeous. And like you said with the viaduct, sturdy. No earthquakes, sturdy.
Incredible building. What a structure.
Yeah.
I'm walking under it and looking around it, thinking, they haven't done anything to this thing. You can see it is just magnificent. It was in the 1830s and 40s, and he died in 1859. So we know he didn't build that one, but there was a guy called Isambard Kingdom Brunel, who was like number 5 in the greatest Brits of all time, or something like that anyway. And he was the one that built all these viaducts all over the country. And he actually, in the 1840s, he actually built a tunnel under the Thames.
Wow.
A tunnel under the River Thames, and ran a train through it.
Oh, wow. What a feat of engineering.
The only problem with it was a steam train. It was in the tunnel.
Oh, that's a problem.
But that's what, Isambard Kingdom Brunel. He was fantastic what he did. He did it all over the country, and you go past places now, and you're saying that's one of Brunel's viaducts. It's got to be. And these things are just massive, and they're just still there. Incredible. But that one wasn't down to him.
Oh, it was beautiful, and just physically, the design was very beautiful too.
It is. It's wonderful.
Well, thanks again, Norm.
Thank you, Norm. I'm going to stop the recording